Our railway system is fragmented. Our infrastructure is owned by a government organisation, Network Rail, and our trains are run by private companies based on time-limited franchises handed out by the government. The Rail Delivery Group is another government organisation which is responsible for tying together some of the operational aspects of these various train companies, and one of the things they are responsible for is this, the National Rail Train Ticket. Now, Britain's trains are of course very expensive compared to other European countries, but this is not so much the fault of the ticketing system itself. However, the National Rail ticketing system does have some major problems which I will be highlighting. Yes, our National Rail ticketing system is broken. Depending on where you buy a ticket from, you might get a neat stack of these little tickets, or you might get this hideous postcard-sized piece of paper that doesn't fit neatly anywhere. When my family go to London, we usually buy our tickets online and opt to pick them up at the station, where we are given a neat stack of these little orange tickets. Because each leg of the journey and the seat reservation for each leg of the journey is printed separately, we end up with 16 of these tickets plus the receipt. These tickets are the ones you get when you buy your ticket on board. Buy on board, David, but aren't you always supposed to buy before you board? Well, that takes me to my main problem with the National Rail ticketing system, and that is inconsistent rules. For some comparison, the Manchester Metrolink is a light rail system which is independent and separate from the rest of the network, and it has one ticketing rule which applies across the whole network. Every stop has at least one ticket machine on each platform, so you need to buy your ticket before you board. And if you are found on a tram at any point without a ticket, then you are fare evading and you will either get thrown off or fined. Now, the enforcement of this is a bit patchy, but you've got to admire the fact that they have one system that is simple and straightforward and very difficult to get confused about. Now, on the National Rail system, this is not the case, and this is obvious because the National Rail system is hugely varied and it involves stations as big and busy as London Turbine, all the way to random middle-of-nowhere halts in the Scottish Highlands, and therefore, obviously, a one-size-fits-all ticketing approach doesn't work. But what irks me is the lack of defined borders between different ticketing systems, which makes it easier for people to get confused. I will demonstrate this using my local station of Heald Green, and a journey from Heald Green to Manchester Piccadilly, which many commuters make on a regular basis. So I was going to use my local station of Heald Green as an example of some of the strange ticketing anomalies that come about as a result of not having a ticket machine, but literally, and I mean literally within the last 48 hours, they have now installed ticket machines on Platform 1, and I think they're also going to install one on Platform 2 over there. So Heald Green is currently being redone, and that is one of the additions, but nevertheless, so while the point I'm about to make no longer applies to Heald Green, there are still many stations across the network which don't have ticket machines, and therefore this is still a problem. So over there is a ticket office on Platform 1. It's currently closed for renovation, but usually it'll be open Monday to Saturday all day except for early morning and late evenings. So usually when you were travelling into Piccadilly, you would buy your ticket from the office before travelling, unless it's early morning, late night or Saturday, in which case the ticket office is closed and you have to buy your ticket on board. Posters around the station and many trains state that it is obligatory to buy your ticket before travelling. Therefore, one would assume, if you were travelling to Manchester Airport from Platform 2, you would have to walk over the bridge to Platform 1 to buy your ticket. Although, that being said, if you board a train on Platform 2 without buying a ticket first, the guard will quite happily sell you one. In fact, if you board a train on Platform 1 without buying a ticket first, even if the ticket office is open, you'll still probably be able to buy a ticket on board. The guard usually walks up and down the train to ask if anybody needs a ticket, but if they don't do this and you arrive at Piccadilly without a ticket, then what? Well, usually at peak times there'll be a temporary desk installed to retrospectively sell tickets to passengers coming from Heald Green and other stations across the line, if the ticket offices are closed. And if there isn't, then who knows? Maybe you'll just walk through without ever being asked to pay. Maybe you'll get caught and fined, despite doing nothing wrong. What if you leave through the other exit via the Fairfield Street lift? There's usually nobody there, but sometimes you get ambushed by inspectors. What would happen to you if you had no ticket? And what if you're travelling from Gatley to East Didsbury without a ticket? Is it your job to go and ask the conductor to sell you a ticket? What if you don't? The problem is, because ticket offices are not open 24/7 and not every station has a ticket office or a ticket machine, it is impossible to have a blanket buy before you board policy. So these kind of policies are usually set by each individual operator. So intercity operators such as Virgin Trains West Coast and Virgin Trains East Coast can set a buy before you board policy because they serve mainly major stations which always have an opportunity to buy a ticket. Although that being said, Virgin Trains East Coast do serve some remote Scottish stations, so again, for those stations, you would have to be allowed to board before you buy, because there's no other option. The problem is that the system is confusing and it is all too easy for innocent passengers to get caught up and fined. Because fines go directly to the train operating company, there is an incentive to catch people out and fine them a ridiculous amount of money. And there are stories that come out from time to time of innocent passengers who get caught up by this system. One particular case is the case of a man named Radko Kellerman from last year, who travelled daily between Hyde Central and Manchester Piccadilly, always buying his ticket on board because Hyde Central did not have ticket buying facilities. In July 2016, as a one-off, he boarded at Gorton instead of Hyde Central and assumed that he'd be allowed to buy the ticket on board as he usually does. When he got to Manchester Piccadilly, having not been approached by a guard, he was stopped by the ticket inspectors. He offered to pay the fare then, but the ticket inspector just let him off with a warning, and that was that. Until a couple of months later, when he was summoned to court and ordered to pay over £680. Another more recent case was that of a man and his son travelling from Liverpool to London, who had bought a first-class advance ticket. They arrived early to Liverpool and so boarded an earlier train than the one they were booked on, although they had been allowed through by the ticket inspector at Liverpool Lime Street. They were fined £480. Now, unlike the first case, there's a clear breaking of the rule here, because if you buy an advance ticket for a specific train, you have to travel on that train. But even so, £480, for goodness sake, that is such a ridiculous amount of money. Especially if the ticket officer lets them through. If the ticket officer lets them through, then I would say it's the ticket officer's fault and not the passenger's fault. Although sometimes ticket officers can be too stringent, such as an even more recent case of a 15-year-old girl travelling from London to Chester, who was stopped at London Euston because the ticket inspector refused to believe that she was 15, even going as far as to insultingly write, "not a child," on her ticket. In their statement following the incident, after it got a lot of publicity, Virgin Trains actually had the cheek to suggest that children who look older than they are should carry ID with them. Really? The first two cases in particular demonstrate a fundamental problem with the ticketing system, in that it's all too easy to make a mistake and get caught and fined. The irony is, people who actually deliberately try to fare evade are more likely to get away with it because they know to deliberately avoid staff members, whilst people making a mistake who might approach a staff member and offer to pay at the wrong time are therefore more likely to get fined. That just isn't right. Another thing that really irks me about the national rail system is the lack of a consistent answer to the question, can you keep your ticket? There are some ticket barriers across the network that will give you your ticket back, and others which will eat it. And this is a major problem that I'm surprised nobody has actually brought up. Now, this annoys me because I personally like to keep my tickets after I travel for a souvenir, but that's obviously not really a concern. What should be a major concern is that passengers who are delayed by over 30 minutes, when they claim delay repay, may have to send a picture of their ticket. So is it possible that train companies deliberately set their ticket machines to eat tickets in order to make it difficult for people to claim delay repay? Additionally, in some cases, people might want to use their tickets for other things after they finish travelling. For example, any ticket from outside Manchester to Manchester Victoria or Manchester Piccadilly will usually have Manchester CTZL written on it as the destination, meaning that the ticket can be used to travel for free on trams within Manchester City Zone. But if you put your ticket into the barrier at Manchester Oxford Road, which I did when I was travelling back from Lancaster last July, you will find that you don't get it back. How are you supposed to travel on the tram if you don't have your ticket? And if you're thinking, well, passengers who know they need their tickets afterwards should just ask a staff member if they could keep it, you would be right in a logical world, and this does usually work. I know because I regularly do it, because again I like to keep my tickets. But when I was travelling to Blackpool North with Ellie and Rebecca last July, and I noticed that the ticket barrier was eating the tickets of the people in front of me, I asked a staff member, "Excuse me, can I keep my ticket?" But he refused to let me, so I had to put it in the machine, which duly ate it. That's not fair. And how is it possible that a massive gaping problem like this hasn't been brought to the attention of the rail delivery group? Why haven't people made a fuss about this? It's a huge discrepancy. Oh, but the problems don't end there. Let's pick another one, peak and off-peak. When is a ticket peak and when is it off-peak? If you're making a 10-minute journey within a small area, then that's probably not a problem for you, because it's likely that that 10 minutes will be entirely within either peak or off-peak for that operator. But long-distance operators, such as Virgin Trains West Coast and East Coast, like to set their peak and off-peak times depending on when the train arrives or departs from London. Now, most people buy their long-distance tickets as an advance, and for them it's not a problem, because an advance ticket for a specific train will therefore be the price that is required for that train. But anybody travelling with an open ticket has to figure it out for themselves, which is not easy. Now, in the lead up to Christmas, there are always major engineering works which take place. The practice of selling advance tickets for trains which the operator already knows is confirmed as not running due to these engineering works has recently been brought to the attention of the Department for Transport, and Chris Grayling himself has said that there will be an investigation into it. Oh, so at least that problem's solved, right? Sure. All of these problems are down to uneven and inconsistent policies and a lack of communication and transparency from train operators, or sometimes just total apathy towards passengers. As with many things, we can't rely on the train operators themselves to fix this problem, so I think it's time for the Rail Delivery Group to step in and fix these issues. #FixOurTickets.